last piece. Xiao, she's going to talk about the art of Fugue and information. Xiao.
Thank you. So about 5 years ago, I was practicing piano one day, and as I often do, I was looking at the reflection of the keyboard and of my hands on the fallboard, and I had this thought of, wouldn't it be really lovely if instead of seeing my own hands there in the reflection, I could see somebody else's hands, and that the piano could serve as a portal to someone else from far away, or perhaps even from another time. So shortly after that, I started off as a graduate student at the MIT Media Lab in Hiroshi's group, Tangible Media, and I started going about trying to build this. So Yamaha kindly loaned me this piano over here, and so here I am in my office with the grand piano crammed in. During the day, I'm programming on my computer, and at night, I turn around to practice on the piano. So my desk chair is actually the piano bench. So despite the superficial similarity between typing on the computer keyboard and playing on the piano keyboard, the two are worlds apart in terms of interaction and in frame of mind. As an undergrad, I went to MIT for computer science, course 6, and computer science is essentially the science of information systems that seeks to encode the world as information that the computer can represent, manipulate, and store. A core concept of computer science is this idea of abstraction. In other words, a way of describing the world symbolically, of categorizing, procedurizing, extracting the salient content over the details. So this idea of abstraction isn't just for computers, it's a really powerful way that human beings make sense of the world intellectually. So suppose I told you that this morning I woke up at 5 a.m., came here to set up at 7, went to an amazing session at 9. I'm giving you an abstracted summary of my morning, skipping the vast sensory details of what had actually occurred. So at the end of the day, as human beings, we have to interact with the world and with our computers. And it is an interaction where keeping things as abstract information isn't the only way, nor is it always the best way. And that's because human beings experience the world through embodied experiences. Let me give you an example. So suppose you wanted to know about the weather. You can either pull out your fancy smartphone, open up your handy weather app, read the temperature from the screen, and look at the icon for the sun to form an impression in your head of what it might be like. Or you could simply step outside, like Li Ning always did when she was a child, and feel the sun on your face and breathe in the crisp mountain air and immediately feel what it will be like. And so, of course, your smartphone in the digital world can give you information that going outside cannot, such as the temperature in another city or the exact percentage that it's going to rain for the next 12 hours. But going outside gives you a much richer, much more immediate experience. And if you're enough attuned to that experience, you always know exactly when rain is on its way. So for the past few years at the Media Lab in the Tangible Media Group, I've been thinking about designing digital information, interactions with digital information to be more experiential. And to that, instead of looking to nature, I've looked to the way that human beings experience music. And that's because music is actually this really abstract thing when you think about it. As sheet music, it's just symbols encoding information on a page, but we never really think about music as just abstract information. And the abstract nature of music does not limit it to just the intellectual mode, the intellectual analysis. And I'd like to think that the very sparsity stemming from the abstract nature of music enables us to better breathe life into it in a performance. So how do you do that? Well, so here I put on my hat as a pianist to tell you that the key is not just what you play, but how you play it. For one, it's deeply rooted in the physical. You've got to develop a finely tuned ear, not just for the correct notes with the correct rhythms, but more importantly for things like tone and timing. And you've also got to develop the physical facilities, your muscular control, in order to play what you hear in your inner ear. But beyond that, there's the playing itself must embody physical qualities like a sense of gravity, a sense of movement, singing lines, dancing beats that affirm a sense of being in the world. But then there's another component, the invisible. I, as the performer, must project my inner world, my imagination, my life experience, my emotions into what I play. And you, as the audience, must in turn project your inner world of imagination, life experience, and emotions into what you hear. So some of my favorite pieces to play are contrapunto, like the Fugues of Johann Sebastian Bach, pieces with multiple voices that intertwine and intersect. And to be rather honest with you, I came to these pieces intellectually. As a teenager, I would print out sheet music and obsessively highlight them, trying to analyze the intersection of the lines, the harmonies, the cadences. But while this piece could be understood in this way, it is also this. Could I get the video, please? All right, so this is an excerpt from the C minor Partita of Johann Sebastian Bach, played by Glenn Gould. Not quite a fugue, but you get the idea. As for me, it was years before I realized that while the intellectual mode cannot be ignored in music, it alone is not sufficient. For music must be in the body and felt from the heart. So indulge me for a second, my computer science side, and let's talk about music as interaction with information, though of course it's much, much more than that. So for almost the entirety of human existence, music could only be heard live, where it was intricately tied to the body of the performer. But with the invention of recording technology in the 19th century, we could now extract only the sound, taking a slice of the performance. And we could listen to it anywhere at any time with a pure sort of listening that focuses more on the content, to the extent that Glenn Gould, whom you just heard, prophesied the demise of the live concert at the hands of the recording. But more than 50 years later, the live concert is still, well, alive and thriving. And I like to think that there's something really powerful about the performer being there. So my project, Mirror Fugue, named for a special type of fugue by Bach, tries to bring the presence of the performer back into the recording. So you might be thinking, okay, why don't you just watch a video? There's plenty on YouTube. It's way more convenient than all of this. And funnily enough, whenever we think about the digital world, we tend to only care about the convenient, the useful, the constantly available streams, no deluge of information flowing through our eyeballs into our brains. And we forget about the richness, the poetry, the beauty of the experience in the world. An experience often flawed and always fleeting, but sometimes it just takes your breath away. And I'm here to tell you that after the years and iterations from working on this piano, that there are times where you must look past just the convenience, the usefulness of the digital world. And if you're able to do that, you can even craft the most abstract information into visceral experiences, which is ultimately what design is all about. But furthermore, if you can embed digital information firmly in the physical world, if you can engage multiple senses, create a feeling of space, and if you allow a bit of room for the imagination to fill in the blanks, something really magical happens where it's no longer perceived as separate streams of useful, convenient, available information, but as a coherent, present, visceral experience. So what can you do with this sort of experience? Well, on the piano, for one, you could listen to a concert from a famous pianist from across the world. So this is my teacher and mentor from Boston, Donal Fox. You could sit in front, have an intimate perspective, and even learn how to play, not just the notes of the hands, but also the breathing, the phrasing, and the characterization of the person. You could also play a duet with yourself like I did in the very beginning, but what I really like to think about is what if you can play a duet with yourself in the past? So, can we switch back to the slides, please? There we go. So this is Alisa, daughter of Hiroshi Ishii, my advisor, but let's just pretend for a second that I am her, 20 years later, all grown up. So I can encounter myself at the piano. Sit down in front of her and even play along. So of course you're not limited to just playing with versions of yourself on this piano. You can play with anyone from any time, perhaps grandparents, even when they were at your age. So obviously this is not my grandfather on the piano right here, but some of you might know him as Marvin Minsky, or the grandfather of artificial intelligence. What you may not know about Marvin is that he actually improvises on the piano, contrapuntal pieces, often fugues. In a fugue, there are always multiple voices that interweave and intertwine. One may take the focus at different times, but the others are never ignored. I'd like to think of the fugue as a metaphor for music performance, for interaction, and also for life. So on one hand, you have the intellectual, the analytical side. On the other hand, you have the physical, the sensorial. And on a third hand, you have the inner world of emotions and imagination. And it is the intertwining of all three that deeply engages us and invites us in. So I'd like to invite you into one final performance on Mirror Fugue, the Aspen premiere of a piece arranged by my teacher, Donal Fox, called Partita for 3 characters, which is a reimagination of the very first piece that you've heard, a prelude from the first Partita by Bach. In this piece, I'll be accompanied by Donal, whom you've heard earlier, and also my good friend and jazz pianist, Nick Sanders. So hope you enjoy. Thank you. Right, so is it Q&A time, or is there time for the special encore performance? Because there is a special encore performance. So Hiroshi, are we inviting someone to the stage for it, or? So, okay, I was actually thinking that for the encore, because the experience up here is actually quite different and much more special than from far away, even though it looks cool from far away too. So I was thinking of picking maybe 1 or 2 special members of the audience to come sit on stage for the encore. So first 2 people to ask good questions, go. Okay.
Can you do it live? Mark Davis. Could that be done live? That was a recording, obviously.
Yes, it was a recording now, but there's no reason why it can't be done live. It's just that I only have 1 grand piano in my office, not 2 from which to feed into each other. And I think in order to do it live, you'd have to deal with issues of latency, which I'm not an expert in, but I'm actually speaking with Cisco about doing possible collaboration. So perhaps in the future, coming to a living room near you. Yes?
Do you find it distracting at all to be looking at either yourself or the other pianist that you play?
Right, so I think it depends on, you raise a really interesting point for the experience of different people. So what I performed here, I think having the visuals there is mainly for people who are watching, so that you see the different people embodying the different lines of the music. For playing there, no, it doesn't really bother me so much. Maybe it might bother other people. I think that sometimes it also helps with like anticipation of what's going on, though of course if you're a musician you can also anticipate by listening to it. But I think it would be really helpful. So for me, the 2 applications that are the most, I guess that I care about the most, one is when you're just sitting in front of it looking into the reflection. Something happens where when you look at the upper body and your peripheral vision, your brain somehow tricks you into thinking that it's more 3-dimensional than it actually is, and you start to believe that actually there's someone there, which has applications for looking at moments in the past, playing with, I don't know, your grandmother. And then the other application is, of course, the learning scenario where you follow their hands, sure, but you can also learn rhythm, breathing, embodying different characters of different styles of music. Yeah.
What are possible applications for this beyond the music? Have you thought of other things that this could be used for beyond music?
Actually, other things that have been done with something similar beyond music have been done 20 years ago by my advisor Hiroshi.
The collaborators in front of you make a huge difference. Also, I'm a calligrapher. I use a brush. People appreciate the results of drawing, but not necessarily the process of gesture. So big difference listening to the iPod versus this one is how the process, embodied interaction. Even before any sounds are made or any stroke on the paper, you see how the process of the embodied interaction. That's really power to appreciate the art of the calligraphy and also the piano. So many arts really requires understanding how the process and the breathing. So I think there's a tremendous spectrum of the application in future.
Okay, yeah, so maybe if the people who ask questions want to come on stage and sit on the keys, while you come up, if you don't have to, of course, I'll tell you about the piece that will be played. So do you guys know Ryuichi Sakamoto? Anybody? So he's a Japanese pianist, very good pianist, and also improviser. And he visited the Media Lab last week, and I had the lucky chance of recording him on my piano. So what you guys are going to hear as an encore is an improvisation by Ryuichi Sakamoto. So yeah.
long as I don't have to play.
Please. Can we get the lights off, please? All right. So please go ahead and sit.